when we were friends, he had been crushing on another lady. So now she came back into the picture, and I was like, you know what? This car that we're driving is an Aston Martin. It's a two-seater car. You bring someone else in it, I'm out. And I laughed.
Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of We Are Theo
Figuring it out.
Yep, my name is Wambui Mehake
And I am Gina Torre.
and we are here with another episode of What I Wish I Knew. Yeah, and we're so excited. I hope you enjoyed the other one. Hata kama watu wengine walinchomea, but I won't mention names. But before we get started, subscribe.
Have you?
Make sure you hit the subscription button below if you're watching us on YouTube, the notification bell if you're watching us on any audio platform. And we can get right into it. I will do no introductions because, of course, you have already seen her.
Yeah.
I think it's okay.
All right.
We get started.
Yes.
So today we are talking about what I wish I knew about boundaries.
All right.
Yeah, so it's about to be lit.
Sounds heavy.
We might have shots fired. No offense to anyone watching, our friends, family.
Yes.
It's not about you, it's about us.
It's all business.
Yeah, maybe you can kick us off with what you knew
Just
about
into
boundaries.
the deep end.
Yeah.
Okay. So, first of all, what are boundaries? Defense. What's a boundary?
Offense. When I think about a boundary, I think like a fence.
So now that depends on
Around yourself.
Yeah. Actually, yeah. It's a fence around yourself. But then there's the statement that I read that says boundaries are not for they're in place to help you have a good relationship with people. And then it's for you, it's your business, but then everyone else has to respect the boundary for you to have respectable relationships with them.
Yeah.
Also, there's another one that I had that sometimes your siblings push your boundaries because they are the ones who made you put them in place.
Yeah, actually, like one of the things about boundaries is you're mostly putting them up for yourself against usually the people closest
to you.
Yeah, so you're not like putting boundaries for the government, ama like putting boundaries for mtu mwenye anaishi sijui wapi.
Yeah.
You're mostly putting boundaries for yourself because of people around you. Yeah. So I think getting into like what I wish I knew about boundaries.
Yeah.
These are things you I don't think that there was ever a time when my mom or aunts or just anybody who was there when I was growing up, I don't think anybody told me about boundaries in the language that we use now.
Yeah.
Maybe there was a way they were communicating it in a different way.
Yeah.
Like kusema like there are certain people allowed into the house. That's a boundary that your parents put for the home, maybe to keep it safe and secure and things like those.
Yeah.
But I wish I knew that it's okay to set boundaries.
Yeah.
Especially with your family. And even if you're young, they should respect your boundaries. Like I wish I knew it was okay to set boundaries with people who are close to me. I don't think it's something I ever thought about.
Yeah.
And the unfortunate bit about being being born fast is sometimes it's hard to like put up boundaries, especially with your siblings.
Yeah.
And it's just important, right? Because like when you're, in my experience, a firstborn, sometimes you feel like if you put boundaries, they won't talk to you or they won't communicate.
That's disrespecting them.
Yeah, so it felt like that language of boundaries, really, when I was growing up, I did not even experience it or like know that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't know that I had an experience when somebody said it's okay if you don't want to have a conversation around X with your sister. at this point in time. So I wish I knew it was okay to set boundaries, and I wish I knew it was okay to communicate my boundary.
Well, I, in the same point, sorry, everyone, I have a flu. And if you hear me cough, just understand it's the riots. But anywho, the the one thing that I would say regarding that, the wish I wish I knew how to set boundaries growing up was, first of all, I was the fourth born in a family of five kids. So most of the time I would be alone. I was a recluse growing up. So most people wouldn't, like even my siblings wouldn't disturb me. But then growing up, I was, I don't say a pushover, but I'd say I was. So even if you don't want to do something because there's a people pleasing aspect, you'd still do it, hence being a pushover.
Yeah.
So had I known how to set my boundaries growing up, then I would have done it sooner. In as much as it's there now, I would have done it much, much sooner. So yeah.
Yeah. And it's hard, right? Because sometimes people think you're so like when you tell you for example you're like your sibling,
Yeah.
when they say can I come over, you're like not today, next week on Tuesdays when you can come over. Sometimes it can feel like from their side, it can feel like you don't care, but it's a boundary you set. You're like, if you allow them to come the way they want,
Yeah.
every now you'll be living with your family, but not living with your family. And sometimes it's hard to communicate boundaries with people that are very close because you think that you will hurt them by communicating the boundary, but in essence, if you don't communicate the boundary, you're hurting yourself and therefore hurting the relationship. Because probably there'll be resentment,
Yeah.
because of a boundary you set but you've not communicated.
Yeah.
So you'll be like, why are they not respecting that this is my space, this is my time, but you've not said you can only come to my house on this day,
Yeah.
at a certain time, right?
Yeah.
Relationships are hectic, man.
Well, the communicating bit, if you don't communicate your boundary, no one would know. I found out in campus, by the way, with my roommates. So, how we were staying was, I mean, like it was a one bedroom house. We were staying in our bedroom house, not the hostel. So it's fine. I'm sleeping on this side of the room. She's sleeping on the bedroom. But now she'd have to go through my room to get to hers. So one time I saw her walking in with shoes and I was like, okay, that is a boundary I'm setting for myself, but I had not communicated.
Yeah.
And then the minute I told her, why do you wear shoes? Why do you walk in the house with shoes when you're passing by my place? But I've already wiped them outside. I was like, no, I've just mopped and I don't like it. So she said, okay, that's fine. If you had not told me, I wouldn't have known it's an issue.
Yeah.
So that clarity of set the boundary and then clarify it with them, because sometimes people do things and they don't know it's wrong until you point it out and then they stop.
Yeah, it's wrong for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very true.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see what else I wish I knew about boundaries. Boundaries are your responsibility, right? It's not, you know what they say, nobody's coming to save you. It's true.
Yeah.
Nobody's coming to save you. You will be the one to save yourself. And saving yourself sometimes looks like um, preparing for battle before battle. So putting up boundaries before even that becomes a situation or like a scenario, right? You know what I mean? So it's like you're going to be in a relationship with someone.
Yeah.
Like let's say my partner.
Mm.
There are certain things where I feel like this is a boundary. Like you're not supposed to cross this boundary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my responsibility to communicate it, especially if you're going to be in a relationship. Because sometimes we get swiped up in the romance of relationship and we make our boundaries blurry and we don't talk about them. But once the beginning point of the relationship ends and now you're living life, then you remember the boundaries you had, and because you've not communicated, it's harder to even enforce them at that time.
Yeah.
So boundaries are your responsibility
Yeah,
to communicate.
that's true. That reminds me
Yeah.
of campus. I don't know if this was my first boyfriend in campus. So we were friends before we started dating.
Mhm.
And then in the process, hapo katikati kashetani kakakuja.
Mhm.
And the guy was like, I don't know what it was exactly, but I started getting icked because he did not spend his birthday with me. He went to spend his birthday with the friends he hangs out with every day. Red flag.
Yeah. Right now in my grown era.
So
Red flag.
I bring that up and he's just nonchalant about it, and I was like, "What changed?" Yeah, what changed? He's like, when we were friends, he had been crushing on another lady. So now she came back into the picture, and I was like, you know what? This car that we're driving is an Aston Martin. It's a two-seater car. You bring someone else in it, I'm out. And I laughed. And I was very proud of myself.
Can we just appreciate the fact that you are an
That is
Aston
not even-
Martin?
This that's not even the best part. He got dumped 2 weeks later. Like a hot potato.
Oh my god.
So that boundary has always been there for me. In relationship wise, there's two of us. You bring someone else, I'm out.
Yeah.
Like there's that. You either choose someone else, or you stay. There's just that boundary that you cannot cross. So,
Yeah.
yeah, boundaries are very important. Now, when you said relationships can sweep you up and then you forget your boundaries, sometimes when, what do you call it? You can have, you know how you can have a hard stop in a meeting, you can have a hard boundary, like you cannot pass this. There's a book I read. It gave me the scenario of what happens, say, in abusive relationships. You'd find there's this lady who was in an abusive relationship, and then they had a kid who grew up, the lady, the girl, now is the one who's narrating. So growing up with an abusive dad who beats the mom, and after she's grown, the dad passes, she doesn't have anything to say in his eulogy. He meets a guy who lays a hand on her, she walks. She goes back to the mom and asks, why? Why did you stay in a relationship where you were beaten? So the mom told her, sometimes the groveling that happens after the abuse confuses you and makes you bend.
Yeah.
Now, the more you allow it, the more it will get to a point where you do not have any boundaries, any values left. And then you'll be like, at least Leo, I've not been hit, I've just been slapped.
Yeah.
So your values diminish. But if you have your boundaries set up straight, now this is in relationships, you have your boundaries set up straight and you have maybe the first trigger, maybe the first boundary you have is don't ever lay a hand on me. And the first time he gets angry or she gets angry, she raises their hand or raises his hand, that is a trigger. You should be able to know like this, I'm not able to do this. This, you are crossing my boundary.
Yeah.
In as much as you've not yet done it, this is just a precursor to it. And then you can hold yourself accountable and then just go.
Yeah.
That is where the boundaries are your responsibility. You hold yourself accountable and you walk away when it's right. Otherwise, if you keep on letting it go, you'll get to a point where you do not have any completely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very true. Because it starts small, right?
It is.
It's
It
like
does.
something like eating into something, like small chunks at a time.
Yeah.
And I think mostly for relationships, I think that's where you can be very blinded.
Really?
Yeah.
The honeymoon phase.
You can be like, ooh, he loves me, he loves me, he loves me. So I feel like boundaries can be, in relationships, can be very hard, first of all, to put up.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just feel like I should not be communicating a boundary like you cannot hit me. I feel like if I feel like I need to communicate something like that with my partner, it will be like, is there a situation where they might, like they're just, I don't know, I feel like there are unspoken boundaries that for me that just because I have maybe communicated with my partner, this is how I grew up and this for me,
Yeah.
this ever happened to me, regardless of whether it's you or another person, out the door, push, I'm gone. So I feel like maybe the just is that how maybe I might have communicated a boundary, but I didn't know I communicated it because me that's one of the things that I say. Like the moment you talk a certain way,
Yeah.
the moment you raise your voice, the moment you raise your hand, even if you don't hit me, the moment you say certain words in certain tones, that for me is a red flag. I'm always in alarm. And me when I panic in a relationship, like in an argument, me I freeze.
Yeah.
I don't sinanga nguvu ya kuwa like
Light.
yeah, and I don't have like to argue.
Yeah.
When you make me panic and make me scared, I will freeze and then be like and then I have like an out of body experience. I can see myself leaving the room.
Associate.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like some of these boundaries, yes, it's my responsibility to communicate them, but I also feel it's my responsibility to take the cue from my partner and be able to identify what is a boundary he has
Yeah.
just from what he communicates, right? So I may not have said that one of my boundaries is you cannot speak to me a certain way or, but I've talked about these are my experiences and how they affected me and how I was hurt.
Yeah.
And I feel like the partner should be intuitive enough to be like, Rita may not have said that this is a boundary, but I know it's a boundary.
Yeah.
Right? So but a boundary is my responsibility to communicate. But in a relationship also, I feel like it's the other partner also has a responsibility in terms of being able to identify even those unspoken boundaries and being somebody who helps you enforce them even outside. Right?
Yeah.
Like if we are in front of other people.
Yeah.
Because there's situations where I've gone and then there's us. It's uncomfortable, and then my partner knows this situation is not. I do not thrive in this situation. I do not thrive. And we left. Or like he's like, don't say anything, just be quiet. Just sit there, I'll talk. So I've not said anything, but they've been intuitive enough to be like they know this is a trigger and this can be a trigger for me. And they help me enforce boundaries that I've not communicated, and sometimes I'm not good at enforcing. And I feel like it can be complementary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah, I just thought about it.
I mean, sometimes it's difficult. Live alone relationships. You can have maybe your female friends, maybe someone who is not used to having boundaries, and then you set a boundary, and then it's like now chaotic.
Yeah.
It's not chaotic. Like you don't want to be friends with me anymore. You don't want to be.
You take it personal.
Yeah. It's not so personal.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's not that deep.
Everyone wants peace of mind.
Yeah.
Now, this translates to. Actually, I would say we've come very far as siblings with my siblings now, because you'd find now my youngest. Nasema my youngest become I have children. No, this is my youngest
sibling. We only take care of plants and animals at this point in time.
My younger sister, see, I'm the second last born. So there's the younger sister and there's the sister I'm following.
Yeah.
Now, the sister I'm following, it would come off as she's talkative, she's outgoing, she's the extrovert of extroverts. And then there's me in the middle who is the realist, and then there's my younger sister who is an ambivert, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
So you find when they're living together, my extrovert sister is going to be like, stories all up in the place, da, da, da. But then my younger sister is like, I don't want to talk. So nowadays, she has also realized that she can set a boundary. So she told my other sister, you know what, when I don't want to speak, kindly just respect my space and then we'll start talking. And it's okay.
Yeah.
It is okay, because she said, I understand, I get it. Because it gets to a point where she's just silent. You might think she's angry at you, but she's not. She's just being. Sometimes you just want you quiet and then you start talking.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't know if you're going through something, or maybe you've just zoned out. So that we've come a long way, and that's a good thing. Even my sister tells me, yeah, we have evolved.
Yeah.
We have, you're no
so
longer the
beautiful.
pushover that you were. I was like, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Otherwise, chaos. But it's amazing. It's amazing to see the way we are evolving and growing together. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that because if she'd not said anything,
Yeah.
the other one would have been like, maybe there's something I did
Yeah.
that made them a certain way. And I feel like boundaries are hard, but they also help you preserve your relationships with
That's true.
people, especially when you communicate them. Because sometimes, speaking as somebody who struggled with like people pleasing,
Yeah.
when you don't know why somebody's behaving a certain way, you tend to think it's about you, and it's not. It's just their boundary, right? And
Yeah.
you can even go out of your way to try and fix something that doesn't need fixing. Like there's nothing wrong happening.
Yeah.
It's just all in your head and stuff like those. So I feel like it's a it helps you preserve your relationship. Once if you're able to just say something, and one of the things that I recently did,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I practiced it with my mom, was communicating a boundary.
Okay.
And it's very uncomfortable, by the way. Coming with your parents, it's very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I told her, and I was like, Mom, when you say X or do X, or anytime you do X, I will be leaving because I at past that point, I don't feel like you will hear me, and I don't feel like we will be able to communicate well. And she said she noticed, right? So she noticed that that's something that disturbs me.
Yeah.
And then she apologized. And it felt so good because now she knows,
Yeah.
and there's a consciousness of at any point of time, if something X happens or X starts to happen,
Yeah.
she knows the next action from me is X. So I don't need to tiptoe around it,
Yeah.
and be scared around it. But anytime I see something that will equal to a boundary being crossed, I have already communicated it. And if I leave, she knows why.
Yeah.
And I think it also sets the tone for being able to see how somebody values you. Because if somebody values and respects you, then this is something they would be doing,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it will tell me if I communicate a boundary and somebody crosses, it tells me there's lack of respect, right?
Yeah.
For me, and also lack of respect for the relationship that we have.
That's true.
Yeah. So it was hard, but I think that's something that I learned, that when you respect a boundary, you're showing how much you value somebody.
Yeah.
And when you communicate a boundary, you're also communicating how much you value somebody.
Okay. So now, we this what I wish I knew about boundaries was setting like a warning system. Now this is sometimes it varies. With different people, you have to set like there's different boundaries, and the magnitude is usually different. So you'd find if you mentioned something to maybe your partner, to your friends, like I don't like this happening, and then the first time they cross the boundary, you can reinforce it.
Yeah.
Like you did this, and remember what I told you about this? Don't do X. That is a boundary I set. Now that warning system where you remind them of this is what I said, because sometimes it's not their boundary. Like when I set a boundary, it's not yours, it's mine. Now if you cross it, sometimes you can do it unknowingly. So I just remind you that is now you've crossed a boundary of mine, and I don't. You remember I don't like this, and just that effective communication where if now you abuse it, you keep on doing it.
Yeah.
Now that's where the consequence comes in. Like, if you set the boundary and there's no like outcome, there's no consequence to you breaking my boundary, then it's just useless, basically. So, like, if I've set a boundary, keep on crossing it, and then I don't do anything about it, that means I'm just I don't want to use the word, but push over. You keep on walking all over me. So if there's a hard stop, there's a consequence of like what you mentioned when you said the conversation you had with your mom. If you do X and you know I don't like X, I'll be doing X.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
I agree. And then also it's um sometimes there are boundaries that can be flexible,
Yeah.
where you're like, you can reinforce. And then there are boundaries that are crossed, it's okay to exit. Like things as sensitive as abuse, things as sensitive as, somebody mistreating you. Those are boundaries that are just
Hard
like,
stops.
yeah. And I know it's hard because there was a time I was in a relationship that was emotionally abusive. And I don't remember being like, if you do this again, I will exit. It was more of you've hurt me, and then me thinking that they will automatically do the right thing. But that didn't happen because I didn't say anything. I was just like, hi, you hurt me. So that equates to don't do it again. Right? There was not a conversation around that. There was just a conversation of you hurt my feeling.
Yeah.
And then it happened again, and then I didn't reinforce. It happened again until something just clicked in me, and it was like, this person doesn't love me, and this person does not respect me, and this person is demeaning me as a human being first and foremost, because they are also putting me through a lot of shame in front of my friends. There's shame in front of even people that just people and they know the behaviors of the other person, and you're like a pity party, right?
That's
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's hard because as a lady sometimes, especially when you're not when you don't have a strong sense of self-worth, it's very easy for people to cross your unspoken or spoken boundaries, and for you to be accepting and not like put a hard stop.
Yeah.
And I think for you to be able to set a boundary, there needs to be a sense of you know yourself, you know what you like and you know what you don't like, and a sense of also self preservation of being like, if somebody does this, I need to be able to leave. And in as much as we want to have that at the beginning, or as we grow up, sometimes, like right now, is when you're starting to learn those things. And then I was starting to put up boundaries around those things. Because unfortunately, that lingo of boundaries is also not there as you're growing up.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's hard.
Very
And
hard.
sometimes some things um, as clear as an abusive relationship, sorry, something as clear as somebody being in an abusive relationship does not translate to somebody leaving immediately, because it also ties into your self-worth. So if you're struggling with self-worth, it's hard to enforce a boundary, which means you're always constantly in a relationship that does not serve you. And the more you keep bending over backwards,
Break.
the more you lose parts of yourself, the more it's harder to even go back to yourself. Right? The more you allow people to cross your boundaries, it's harder. It's very, very hard because you also are scared of staying with yourself and listening to yourself, because this is wrong.
Yeah.
So it's even hard to like call yourself a kamputano and be like, Rita, you are not doing, you're not protecting yourself.
Yeah.
You are bearing yourself for people to hurt you. It's hard to even sit with yourself. So I feel like, in as much as it's hard, when somebody crosses a boundary, in as much as it's hard to communicate, try, because at the end of the day, when you go and you're alone, it's harder for you to sit with your thoughts if you've allowed for somebody to continually cross your boundaries, right? Yeah.
Actually, tying on the same thing. There's a day Leah mentioned. Sometimes you find people stay in abusive relationships where your boundaries are not considered.
Yeah.
Like they're not even a factor, because your self worth, you think you deserve it.
Yeah.
You deserve that harsh treatment. You deserve the negativity that comes with whatever you don't even have boundaries to begin with. Like you had them, and then you feel like you deserve the bad treatment that you're getting. Your boundaries crossed over and over again. So yeah, it ties into self worth.
Yeah,
If you
it
do
does.
not like being by yourself, having the kamkutano, the conference meeting every single, like keeping yourself in check. Yeah, it can be tricky, and then sometimes you find it's hard for some people to have boundaries if they use other people to validate their existence. So you wouldn't have any boundary if being in a relationship is your identity, if being with like having certain friends is how you identify as, that is your validation of this life. You can't just be by yourself. You can't just coexist. Peke yako. That's just it's sick and hard and difficult, but it's something that I'm glad that is we're starting to learn and we're starting to reinforce them. That way, it's not like no one can just walk over you without reason or any. Even at work, in workplaces, if you have a boundary set and you stand up to it, even your supervisors would have to like back down. Now um, this happened when I was, oh yes, I was in a call center. I mean, show me a Kenyan who was not in a call center before. I mean, there are, but there's this supervisor who was trying to, this superiority complex. Like, I am the supervisor. What I say goes. And I stood up for myself and I was like, no, this is not what I'm doing. And then he tried to threaten me by telling me, you'll have to speak to the manager. I looked him dead in the eyes and I was like, I'll speak to the manager. Yeah. So like if you have a boundary set, even the person who is trying to overpower you, they would know this is a hard stop for you and there's nothing they can do to like prevent that from happening or to cross that boundary for you. So yeah, it applies in an all-rounded aspect. Yeah.
So true. And I feel like if you're struggling with your boundaries, I think that's okay. It takes time to be able to
make
be
mistakes.
Like, we will be like, you cannot cross this. This is a no-brainer. And then I think there's a level of just speaking from past experience. The moment I was like, no, you can't do this anymore, and I stood my ground. It was like the other person was in shock.
Because now.
It was like, you know how
that's common statement now that is trending is when you lose your fear, they lose their power. That's it. That is the exact thing that happened.
That's actually so accurate.
It is.
Like when you lose the fear of, would they still like me?
They lose the power over you.
So
essentially true. Because you're waking up into yourself.
Right?
And then you're realizing, you know what, I don't deserve this. Exactly. This is not my portion.
I love that. Because it was such, and it gave me so much power. Right? Because I was like, because they were shocked and I was like, so they knew it was wrong, but they didn't think I had it in me to stand up for myself. So if you're struggling with your boundaries, you just need to find some inner strength.
But then there's the aspect of, for you to want to put a boundary, you can't put a boundary because of someone else. Because someone else put a boundary and you want a similar one. No, that's the thing. Like, experience is what makes you have the boundaries in place.
Actually, the lessons learned.
Experience is what makes you have the boundaries in place. Like, you can just wake up one day and be like, you know what? I only go places. The boundary that I have is I'm only choppering places. I've never been to a chopper. You have to set a boundary after you have already experienced something and you realize it doesn't work for you, and then you put it in place to prevent it from like recurring down the line.
I feel like it's also you can set based on an experience, but you can also set based on your values, right? So like for example, if you value say for example I value my family or I value my relationship with Jay, there are things I will not stand for just because of that value, right? Like there are things somebody cannot say in my presence about my partner because of that value. That's a boundary I've set because of what I value, right? And it's also like I value our friendship, so I will not allow for somebody to come and badmouth you in my presence. That's also like what do you value, and then being like, because I value this, then there's a boundary around. You cannot do anything that goes against my value. So I think it's both ways, right? There are values that you
there's another aspect.
Yeah.
There's experience. There's trauma.
Because
there's
trauma
values.
Do you think that sometimes we think we are putting boundaries, but we are just putting up walls because we are scared?
To some degree, yes.
Serious, because sometimes I think there's
Because
a
you don't
black
go
line
through it
between.
again.
Yeah, you're
It's
so hard. You
like,
think you're putting a boundary,
but it's not. It's just a shield to
right?
protect you from going through that again.
Yeah.
It's like having a very bad heartbreak, and then you're like, no, men are trash.
Yeah.
That is usually a defense mechanism, and then you want to protect yourself from going through that again.
Yeah.
In
So
as
it's
much
not a
as
boundary.
that's not a boundary, just blocking yourself from experiencing it again. In as much as it won't be the same experience as you had before. Now that's the blue dot effect, where you say, for example, the blue dot effect was a study done in I think which five. They take like 50 people, 100 people, take one of each one into a room. There's a screen. Now on the screen, there's it shows either blue dots or purple dots. But for 30 minutes, 1 hour, I'm not sure about the timing, but you find the first interval of that time, they will show more blue dots than purple dots. And then the second interval of that time, they'd show more purple dots than blue dots, but the feedback they got was blue, blue. Even if you see a purple dot, you see blue. So now you find if you have gone through a traumatic experience and you've gone through it maybe the second time or the third time, you stop seeing the purple dot. You start seeing the blue dot every single time you make an assumption. It's the same thing with you've had a bad experience in a relationship with a guy. Maybe he was a narcissist, and then you meet another person who has the same. Then you're like, you know what? No, men are the same. But in real sense, you're supposed to approach a situation with fresh eyes because you don't know. Basically, you don't know.
Yeah.
So stop the assumption and then just know, because you find it's a different experience, and protecting yourself. You realize,
Yeah.
So boundaries.
Our producer, do you want us to wrap it up? I think that was such a good conversation.
Yeah.
And it's just like opened my eyes to like when you talk about boundaries, just being clear on, is it a boundary? Am I trying to protect yourself from something?
Yeah.
And something that I've learned, you will always find answers in your quiet time. You'll always know the truth innately when you spend time alone with yourself.
Yeah.
You will know the truth. It's hard sometimes, you can ignore it, but you will always know in your gut, and you need to trust your gut. Anyway, I will stop preaching. Thank you for attending this sermon with myself and Gina.
Actually, that is true. They're feeling it in your gut. They say your emotions remember for you. When your conscious does not remember, your emotions remember. That's why you have that gut feeling or instinctual feeling that it's not right. So exactly. It was lovely.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Follow us across socials, me_r_Theo. And if you have not subscribed or hit the notification bell, who are you?
Where are you from?
Let us know. Thank you so much for watching, and we will be seeing you on the next one.
Bye.
Bye.